Welcome, everybody. And we're very, very pleased to be presenting this Legal Sustainability Network Member Forum. I'm going to give it just a couple of more minutes here before I introduce myself and our co-host and, kick it off just because we had a couple of people that were registered that I don't see on here yet.
Hey, Brooke. Hey, Brooke.
All right, well, I think we'll just loop people in as if we have any late arrivals, we'll be happy to get them into the flow here, but I think we can get started. Welcome once again to the Legal Sustainability Network Member Forum. We're very excited to get to talk to all of you today and share some thoughts about how people are doing sustainability across the country. Next slide, please. So today I'm a co-host with Barrie Handy. I'm Douglas Domenick. I go by Doug. You can call me Doug. I'm the Chief Facilities and Workplace Strategies Officer at Chapman & Cutler, and I'm Vice President of the board for the Legal Sustainability Network. Barrie?
Hi, everyone. Barrie Handy. I am the Senior Sustainability Manager with Davis Wright Tremaine, which is a large law firm on the AmLaw list, I'm happy to say. We are based in Seattle, Washington. And I am on the board also of LMA. I cannot remember when I joined the board. I've been on the board for quite a while. We're really happy to have you with us today. We really want to have a conversation with you, so we hope that you'll be able to ask questions and engage in some of the subject matter. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we also have Brooke Detterman, the president of the board, on, our esteemed colleague. LSN is a nationwide, there's Brooke in the chat saying hi to everyone. Is a nationwide association of law firms, large and small. We're trying to provide content on a regular basis. So we've had webinars in January, February, and March with such varied topics as well-being in the legal workplace, and then sustainability, economics, and pro bono. We also have another webinar for later this month, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Recently, we launched our carbon calculator. So it's a member benefit. You can log into the LSN website and start to calculate your carbon footprint on a very, it's a very sophisticated tool. It's not meant to be all encompassing necessarily of, your complete carbon footprint, but it's a outstanding jumping off point for all of you to start to understand and get your arms around where your carbon footprint is. It's something we're able to offer in conjunction with our partners over in England who developed this calculator. So next slide, maybe. All right, that's our webinar from May 21st. So I'm just going to jump in here with our first topic. We got a question from one of our members who registered today. And they asked about, in today's political climate, is anyone experiencing resistance from their firm or clients as it relates to ESG? And if so, how are you handling it? And so, just to start off the conversation, happy to share that at Chapman and Cutler, at this time, we're not experiencing any resistance from partners or from our clients. In fact, sustainability and ESG questions are still showing up on the RFPs that we're getting from clients. So we have not faced any difficulty. We've also tried, in particular with ESG, to have a very broad-based program that would appeal to the many diverse views that we have at a law firm, whether that being, we support pro bono work for veterans organizations, as well as, some immigration pro bono work. So we really try to have a diversity of viewpoints. And then as it relates for me specifically, I can say that part of it is also that sustainability doesn't always cost the firm money. Sometimes it saves the firm money. And, one recent example of that is I'm here in Illinois, and our primary electrical provider is ComEd. And about a week and a half ago, I was able to get a new contract with an alternative energy provider that does solar and wind generated power generation exclusively. And I locked in a rate that was very beneficial. And then, basically 5 days later, ComEd announced one of the largest rate hikes in its history. And so, in this case, being sustainable, it was a benefit to the bottom line, because ultimately for the next 3 years, we're very likely to save a lot of money on electricity. So that's how, that's my environment here at Chapman and Cutler. Does somebody out there have, a different perspective, or, or is that something that's similar for you?
Well, Doug, I'll just add that Dave's right. We we aren't seeing anything happen. We just had a climate resilience program, which was extraordinarily well attended. We also just hired a brand new head of ESG and sustainability. So we continue to, business as usual, continue to grow our ESG team in particular.
Yeah, I would say I'm Scott from DLA Piper, but I would kind of agree with both of you. That's one of the things that, we receive is the RFPs. We work really closely with marketing and our pitch and proposal group, whether it's, potential new clients or current clients. We're still seeing the questionnaires come through with, questions asking, what are we doing on the sustainability side? And we track all these, but I will say probably within the last, 3 or 4 months of this year, we've probably seen an increase in questionnaires that have come through, comparing it to, previous years at this time. So the clients really haven't backed down. And a lot of what we do is we get questionnaires or we report to EcoVadis. And some of them will just ask, submit a request to EcoVadis to share our platform with them. But it really hasn't slowed down. And, even on our end, we haven't really made any changes to our program. There are certain things we're being a little more cautious with, the DEI piece that we work closely with that group on. But, on the sustainability side, we just continue to, do what we've been doing because we have a lot of, international clients. And, for the clients that are based in Europe, things aren't changing with how their expectations or what they're asking us to report. So kind of in line with both of you.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, Scott, that you bring that up, because it's something that I was thinking about reflecting on this morning is, for the very largest law firms like, DLA, you're international. So like, some of this, simply is borderless, and, you're not going to have the opportunity to just step away from the game entirely, because when you have international operations, you've got to be compliant in the EU, for instance, or if you've got operations in the Far East, you've got to be culturally sensitive, and you have to understand who your clientele is in each region, and that's kind of the basis of some of the tenets of ESG, is just knowing people and meeting them where they are.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, Oliver, you want to say something?
Hi there. Yeah, Oliver Wright from Clyde & Co. Yeah, just to chime in from our perspective, really echoing similar to what Scott just said and what you both have said previously. Clyde & Co is an international law firm similar to DLA Piper, so we have the similar thing of a lot of our clients being global clients, and therefore they're not too affected at the moment. We have had some degree of sensitivity around the DEI work that we're doing, and I think we're sort of, shall we say, nuancing our messaging slightly without necessarily affecting what we're actually doing behind the scenes, but certainly the way we present and some of the keywords that we use, I think we're still in the process of finessing, shall we say. But we haven't had any change in terms of the questionnaires that we have coming from clients, any of those sorts of requests. And I think to your point about electricity tariffs as well, with things like that, it's very much tied in with a business case a lot of the time anyway. So I think rolled in with general energy efficiency improvements, we would always have been making the business case and the financial saving case for doing stuff around energy efficiency, and I think that will continue to be the case anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yes, like that's a really great point, because depending on where you are in your, the practice of sustainability for your particular firm, an LED retrofit is almost always going to have, a fairly strong return on investment, for paying off the equipment through energy savings. So there are ways to make economic arguments for sustainability. There always have been. I don't think this is news to anybody, but it's good business. Does anyone have anything else that they want to share about the climate, the political climate of today and challenges? All right. Well, so we have another question that was brought up by a participant, and this one's a little bit more open-ended. So we're really, hoping that people will chime in. And someone was curious about the sustainability initiatives that other entities have implemented, particularly those entities with multiple offices. And, if you want to elaborate on which initiatives have been successful versus not so successful, that would be that'd be great. And in the spirit of, trying to be a good facilitator, I'll start with, one of our initiatives. We've tried to compost in our offices across the country. And I would say that we've had some mixed success with that. In, San Francisco, our office in San Francisco, it's quite easy because that's just, municipal law in San Francisco, you have to compost. And so like there has been a third stream from, you've got your landfill, you've got your recycling, and you've got your composting. It's always been that way. But about 7 years ago here in Chicago, we were able to implement a composting program because Chicago has actual compost pickup vendors. And we were able to contract with them to divert, a nice portion of our garbage flow to composting. And then, it's been more challenging, like in, Charlotte, it was hard to find a vendor that would pick up your compost. And so now, 5 years after we started trying to find somebody to do it, and we've been able to finally contract with somebody in Charlotte to pick up our composting stream. And so that, wish it could have happened sooner. So I'm going to call that one not as successful, but we got there eventually. So so that's one of the things that we've tried to do on a nationwide basis. But because of the local vendor availability, it has its ups and downs. Oliver, I see you shaking your head. Do you have any sustainability initiatives you want to talk about?
I was more sort of sympathizing, I suppose, with what you were saying. Yeah, we've had a few challenges around waste streams across our US offices. I know a couple of them have successfully implemented compost, but that is always a challenge based on the availability of carters and collectors. But we've also got some not success stories around waste as well in some of our offices. So I'm loath to say we're having a great success on that front at the moment, because it's a bit sort of one step forward, two steps back at times. So watch this space. I'd say it's an ongoing battle on the waste front.
Well, and for any of you that have, Chicago operations, I'm in my second building with this composting program, and I've gotten well versed at confronting the landlord's worst nightmares about compost, that it's going to create a stinking heap of garbage with all of these are red herrings. It just doesn't happen. I mean, in some ways, it's a benefit to have a composting stream separated from your, general garbage. And so, in my building at 320 South Canal here in Chicago, I've actually helped one other tenant get their program started, just because I think it's the right thing to do. And Skadden Arps moved into the building not too long ago, and I'm currently in the process of helping them get their composting program going. I just think it's the right thing to do. I don't really consider it some kind of competitive advantage. I think it's just I think we're all in this to try and make the world a little cleaner, a little better. And so if any of you have Chicago operations that have an interest in composting, I am very happy to be a resource, for you or for anybody on boots on the ground in Chicago. Just Google me. My Chapman and Cutler website will come up, and you can get a hold of me.
Thank you. I'd love to connect on that front. Actually, our Chicago office is quite sizable, and I'm sure they would benefit from a food waste collection. They hold a lot of events and stuff as well, so I'm sure there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
No, it's tough. I'll tell you from my standpoint, I'm kind of looking over your shoulder here, and I see you got the little recycle bin behind you there to pull out. But the one of the challenges I've run into, so I'll just tell you for the group here that I've been in a sustainability role like full time for about a year, but I've been doing sustainability since about 2016 or so, kind of like a part-time thing in addition to operations. But I think the challenges we run into, like when I was in this operations role previously, is that it's just getting people to do the right thing. And I'm one that I don't like to have signage up for every little thing, because I think at some point you do too much signage, people just kind of ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even with those little the logo and the little emblem things you got going on, the we have those in some of our offices. The problem is people sometimes just don't pay attention to that. So it's something that we're trying to figure out. Do we put like a sign up, a little plastic holder that kind of educates people recycle, composting, trash, and let it sit out for a month or so? The challenge we run into, which I'm sure some of you are in, is people don't come in every day. There are, people that come in 2, 3 times a week, but people don't come in but once every couple of months. Are they going to pay attention to that when they bring put their lunch back and throw it in the kitchen somewhere? But we're trying to just educate people to get them to know, what we're doing, but the reasoning behind it, if we can, include statistics with it. So they, pictures of landfills, that's kind of a good idea, at times, because they're going to see like see pictures of landfills. I'm like, oh gosh, there's so much stuff that goes there that shouldn't. But it's definitely the what the employees are responsible for as a challenge. Other things like, e-waste and all that kind of stuff. We have a little bit more success with that, but that's operations partnering with the IT techs to make sure that stuff isn't thrown away. But it's just those little things. But it's definitely something we got to work on too to get our people on board with.
So I hear you there, Scott, because that is our challenge, right? I mean, like, it's like any ongoing program, right?
Mhm.
Like I have done seminars, right? Like where I've, invited everybody in and I talk about composting, or I've done this on more than one occasion, or I invite the composting vendor in and they talk about it, and like, it's a great event and like a lot of people show up, but then, we're a hybrid work environment. So so those people that are a little less more disengaged from the office, they show up and here they are, they're putting the wrong thing in the wrong bin. And it is a constant, personally, like without being like, too weird or like, big brothery about it, like, I'll engage somebody in a conversation, at the trash bin. If I see I'm not doing the right thing. I mean, I just take a minute and say, hey, did you know that that's actually compostable? That napkin's compostable. You don't have to put it, in the land. And people seem to receive that pretty well. I try not to be, like I said, too, creepy about it. But so like we've tried to do some webinars, like and some other in-person events from time to time, but it is such a challenge just to keep that, in front of people's minds. But I would still, even with the, difficulty of training, your average, partner or employee, I still think, like, and I think, Scott, to your point, and Oliver, I think you were maybe alluding to this a little bit, is, if your food service staff is really easy to train. And so like, if you can divert, food waste that's coming from a conference that was not well attended and there's a bunch of food that doesn't get eaten, if that's getting composted, you're still making a significant, stride in terms of diverting food from the landfill or compostable material from the landfill. So I mean, just because you don't get universal compliance doesn't mean it's a wasted effort. Especially since the commercial composters that we use, they grind up, everything that comes through, because they're taking stuff from kitchens, from restaurants. So, I mean, they've got bones in there. So they put it through an industrial grinder to help get it started. And so a little bit of plastic in there is, it's not the end of the world in terms of, I mean, like, obviously, you don't want people to be, horribly bad about putting a bunch of plastic in your compost. But I mean, a little bit of plastic getting ground up, does not seem to hurt the composter, the composting significantly.
Yeah, I'll just add, this has been a real challenge, and I don't think people want to do the wrong thing. I think they really want to do the right thing. And so we're focusing, on the education as well. and I'm sure you've all done this. I mean, one of the things that we did from a recycling purpose for recycling purposes is we have literally removed all plastic from every single office, even paying for these new water machines, which are pretty freaking cool. They have hot water and cold water, and they have sparkling water and flavored water. And we've been putting those into our offices to get rid of all that plastic. And we don't, we have compostable plates, compostable cups. We got rid of lids because we couldn't find compostable ones. So we've been working really hard on doing that. That has helped, but just to share a little joke and everybody can feel my pain, we just found a janitor in our Portland office who took all the recycles and dumped it all in with the garbage and then carried it out. And we caught him and he said, oh, well, we just put it all together and then we pick it all out at the end. No, they don't pick it out at the end. I think our biggest challenge has been working with our building landlords. A lot of landlords are just flat out, they will not allow composting, period. So we're climbing those hills. And then we have others, like in Alaska. I won't even begin to tell you all the challenges that you have in Alaska. They don't even have recycle facilities for certain things, like so like for tin cans and things like that, they won't do anything inside the office. You have to, we have a really great person who's dedicated her life to sustainability, and she literally picks up every single can, puts it in her car, and drives it to a facility. So that's still the Wild West there, but yeah, I feel everybody's pain. Scott, we're working on the signage. If we ever get somewhere, happy to share that with your Seattle office, just to see if we can make use of the same kind of tools. I think the most impactful thing I ever saw was a film that was produced by the state of Oregon on what happens to garbage, and so that cured me of using plastic bags and things like that. But shaming people is about the only thing that seems to work.
I mean, the other thing that I think I could chime in on, I don't want to, call them out too much on this, but like, I can't, Skadden asked me for some help on figuring out their Chicago composting program. And, one of the things that was really beneficial for me is that we moved into this new building in 2021, and we had been composting previously. So it was already in the design, right? So, and good design helps, right? Because if you can consistently place your compost bins and your recycling bins in the similar spots in all of your pantries and throughout the floors, it makes a big difference. And just having that extra pull-out, drawer in our pantries for the compostable, makes it possible. Whereas, for better or worse, like, my colleagues upstairs from me, like they didn't have a composting program, at their old office site. So they didn't build it into the design. And so now they're trying to figure out where to put bins for composting. So for any of you that are in the midst of a move or a remodel, good design matters, and thinking about it while you're still planning your facility can actually pay really great dividends going forward. So get on those design committees for your for the offices that might be considering a move or a remodel.
Yeah, just to chime in really quick on that, I totally agree with you on that, because I'm out of San Diego, but we used to have two offices. We now have one. But one of the things we kind of did like a partial remodel several years ago, and there were some changes with how we handle recycling and trash. So what they did, this was prior to the remodel was prior to any changes that took place through property management. But we had the little pull out trash and recycle bin, similar to what you have, and trash and recycle was the same size. But what ended up happening when the change came through property management that said basically everything can go into the recycle bin except for food and liquids, the problem we ran into is the recycle was overflowing, and then people started using the trash. And we just ran into that problem consistently on our floors where, nowadays with, recycled trash and composting, it's kind of like, you have the space, but you need to have the same size bins because if, you're expecting everybody to recycle or use composting and there's very little trash, you'd probably want to make that trash bin, somewhat smaller. I was trying to attach a picture we have in our offices, but I couldn't attach it to the chat. But we basically have like a standard size recycle bin, like just like we all have underneath our desks. But we have like a little clip on, it just clips on. You could probably fit a ream of paper in there, but that's where food and liquids go. But it kind of encourages everybody put everything into the recycle bin that you've been provided, and it'll be handled properly.
Like that.
That's cool. That's interesting. So, I'm just going to call out a couple of people that have been on the sidelines here and see if, Jeff or Lindsay or Brooke has any pressing issues that they have any concerns about or questions about.
No, all these things have been tricky for us too. And like, look, we're a firm that only does environmental law. Everybody here knows about this stuff, and yet people put things in the wrong places and mix up recycling and do all these things all the time. Human behavior is a tricky thing to kind of course correct. I find myself, unlike you, Doug, being not so nice about it sometimes. But
yeah. Well,
No,
yeah. Yes, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say nothing to add here. I appreciate the conversation. We're our sustainability committee here at Frost Brown Todd is kind of getting reinvigorated recently, and so we're looking for the ideas of how to spread these ideas amongst our now nationwide offices. So hearing what has worked for you all, what's been challenging, that's been very helpful.
Well, that's interesting. So, contrary to the question that we let off with, so you're finding that there's a reinvigoration of the sustainability needs at your firm, huh?
Well, I guess just a little more just in particular with the folks on the committee,
Okay.
trying to come up with ideas and it's kind of always been there in the background. We're trying to make it a little more prevalent. So yeah, but at the same time, even though there is a group of us within the firm that wants to do that, we are dealing with the exact questions and issues that the first question raised of the outside forces seem to be going the opposite direction. So but I think like you all, as far as I know, I think we're in the same boat that most of our clients and the questions that we're seeing on RFPs and things like that are still about the same, of what, people are still interested. People still want to know what we are doing to help with sustainability.
One of the things we do at DLA Piper is we're ISO 14001 certified. So what we require, so we have what we call environmental leads in each office, and there's a number of different tasks that they have to do to continue to maintain that certification. But one of the tasks that they have is an office sustainability plan with a number of different ideas, whether it's working with building engineering to ensure that their HVAC systems are working properly and they're not running them more than they need to. Getting rid of those little, I don't know if you have those banner pages that might have your employee ID number. When you print, it's you got your job, I have my job that prints, you can sort those out. Do we need those types of things? Can we reduce printers? But we probably have a long list of things that we have in the works for this year, in addition to things that we've already done. Like if anybody wants to see what I've put together, put your email in the chat and I'll send you some samples of, things that have been already completed on our end or things that we're working on. But that is sometimes a challenge because I think, as it was mentioned earlier, there are challenges where, one thing may work in one office where it's not going to work in another, whether it's, tied into property management, or it's just the culture of that office is like they're not going to get rid of water bottles no matter what we do. Where other offices like we haven't had water bottles for years, So those are the types of things that we definitely run into.
I love that, Scott. We did that too. We had, and to Jeff's comment about kind of re-energizing, we had that issue. So we had probably one of the first, so-called sustainability committees way back a million gazillion years, right? And then they just kind of, disappeared. And so in earnest, I started ours in 2019. And so we've done what you have done, although we have committees. So I have a committee in every single office, and we make them put together a goals and actions list. And I guess my only frustration with that, I'm so proud of them for doing that. First of all, let me say that. But my only frustration is that if I don't set the meeting and have the conversation, stuff doesn't get done, right? So we all can feel that pain. But I think it can't be just done by us. We have to get people who are passionate about it to help do it, and then we've got to celebrate them. Like I was talking about the gal who would pick up the cans, I would make sure that she got a shout out at every single meeting, but that she was doing this, amazing work. I mean, who wants to put a bunch of dirty cans into the back of their car and drive them across, Alaska and make sure that they get to the right place? She was also collecting glass, I found out later. So that's the big thing, is having them do the work and then celebrating, the work that they are doing. It's going to be a long haul, everyone. I mean, we're in for the long ride, and it's going to be up and down and really bouncy, especially right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Somebody does have to own it and keep them going down the right path, because, oh man, that's a challenge we run into, is if we don't push them, all these people that are in these roles are either a receptionist or somehow tied into operations, but they have other day jobs. So sometimes when I go, there's things they need to do for their certification, but it does take work to push them along and make these things happen. But they kind of know the goals of the program, so we just have to give them that little extra push. But I think, like you said, some incentives or something to get them to do it would help out too.
Well, and I think the certification is really interesting. I wasn't aware of that, so I'm going to drop you a little note so you and I can exchange emails so I can find out a little bit more about that. I have made it a point to put lawyers on the committees, partners in particular, because they have just as much skin in the game as everybody else. And you'll get your staff is always motivated and wants to do good things, but you got to get those partners engaged in doing it. And then I make every single office report at a quarterly meeting and tell us what they've done. And I'll tell you that is very motivational when they're going to be in front of, management and others and say, we haven't done anything. So that's been a helpful tactic.
Yeah, Barry, I agree. I'm actually a managing partner and I chair our sustainability committee. So yeah, I don't always want to spend the time doing it, but I do it.
Yep.
And then you can tell people how to spend money in a way that is a little easier.
Barry, how many offices do you have reporting quarterly on their progress?
Let's see. I think we're at 12. We're we don't have any international offices. We used to have a Shanghai office, but just all local offices, and we've got about 12 now. And then we have that pesky thing of where offices are popping up, but people are saying that they're really not a real office. Does anybody have to deal with that?
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And then what do you do when you're, and this is kind of leading into one of the things that I wanted to chat with people about is carbon footprint reporting. So we're having those pop up more often than not. Like you hire a lateral and the lateral's like, well, I live in Denver and I'm going to work in Denver. And you're like, well, does that mean we now have a Denver office? So I've been struggling with that. And a lot of times it's like, no, they're not a real office. So that means we're not getting a real carbon footprint report, right? So is everybody doing carbon reporting? Everybody on this call? So is everybody working with a consultant?
Yeah, we have one.
Yeah. So once again, share my pain. In 2019, we decided that we would report to CDP. That was the most nightmarish thing I've ever been involved in my entire life, my entire career. We did it for 2 years. Fortunately, we have an associate who basically is brilliant and, is kind of a climate change expert, environmental expert. And if I hadn't had him, I think I would have quit. So we did that. It was painful. We learned a lot. And then one of our main clients, many of you may know who they are. I'm not going to name them, but they're a huge tech firm. Anyway, they required that we start reporting to them. And so they had us do it through their own portal. And that's been a real challenge too. But I just had some lessons that I wanted to share with people just to see if this resonates with anybody. So the smartest thing we did was we hired Green Places, and many of you are probably working with Green Places, but that changed my life. That in fact, Jeremy was supposed to be here, but he's not here, so he's not going to get to hear the great shout out that I'm giving to him and his team. But that was amazing because we had a partner who is the head of our energy department. We had several energy lawyers, we had environmental lawyers, we had all these people, but we thought that we only had 3 drivers of emissions. But the easy one, office energy consumption, right? Employee commuting and business travel. Well, guess what? There's goods and services, a little tiny thing called goods and services, and maybe you guys are already very well aware of that. But that was sort of like such a huge dramatic change for us, and so the things that I was going to share is what did I say? I wanted to share sort of the challenges that we had and see if people are still having those same challenges. So now that we're doing this and we're on our journey, we still have to convince management that reporting is really important and that reporting costs money. It costs money. And so the firm has to say, yes, it's important and we're going to pay for it. And it's not just things like having the consultant. It's like if you want a report from UPS on your carbon footprint, they're going to make you pay for it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the other huge thing has been getting providing confidential information to the vendor. When I first told them that they were going to have to provide this confidential information, my accounting department said, absolutely not. Nope, not going to do it. So that took a lot to actually be able to get them to give reports and trust it. And then, of course, as you all know, data collection, which is, unbelievable. And I have had so many challenges with the landlords. I've literally, I sent them a Word document. I sent them a survey. And this year I ended up just sending them an Excel spreadsheet. And guess what? They actually like the Excel spreadsheet. So that's the first time that we've had success with getting the information from them. But I just kind of wanted to point out that those are, and then we created our own employee survey so that we could collect that kind of data. But wondering what other people are doing to make this process better, easier.
So it's super interesting because Barrie, we're going through the same thing with Green Places, and you and I have talked about it, at various forums. So like that landlord survey was, pretty frustrating because, we didn't get the data back and the units that we wanted necessarily, or, even complete. And what we did to kind of, hack it a little bit was with the landlord that I had the most leverage over, my Chicago landlord. So we're big tenant, original tenant to the building. I made him sit down with me and we went through the whole survey together and we talked about like what kind of challenges they were going to have and what kind of units they could report in and that really helped because then when we went back to the other landlords, when they said, oh, we don't know how to do that, we were able to, we'd say, our landlord in Chicago has this report they run off of their BAS system. And like, maybe you have the same kind of report you can run. And then they'd go ask, and they'd be like, oh, we do have that, right? So I found that to be a helpful hack, which was like, sit down with whatever landlord you think is most helpful and like kind of learn what their perspective is. And then it helps inform how to extract the information from some of the less interested landlords that, don't really care about sustainability or don't know about sustainability. That's how I got through that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's helpful though to meet with them because I've met with all of my property management companies, kind of have some of the same challenges that I think the rest of you have. But we're making progress, but we do collect all the emissions data from property management. But sat down, talked about the emissions, the data we need, but also had, a bunch of other questions, just to kind of get an idea of what's going on for the DLA Piper offices. Are you LEED certified? Do you have a sustainability report? If you do, can you provide a copy? All that kind of stuff. But we put together a spreadsheet, and basically, a lot of the property management companies were not able to get, actual data just for our space because we don't have our space metered. It's just for the whole building. So we gave them a spreadsheet, and basically, there's a lot of estimates that take place, but it allows for them to put in the square footage for the building, to put in our square footage, and then put in the usage, and then it just kind of calculates it all through the formulas. But it helps us, with those estimates that we need for our space. Yeah, but it's an interesting process working with some of them. Some are more cooperative than others. And it just happens to be sometimes they get it to us quickly. Sometimes we have to wait several months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it interesting because our San Francisco landlord like didn't want to they were like name, rank, and serial number, like nothing helpful, right? It was just, the bare minimum, and so like when we got that response back, that's when we decided, like I said, we sat down with our Chicago landlord and like kind of just went through the whole questionnaire to understand where they were going to mine the data from. And then we went back to that landlord and said, okay, we know you can do better than this, this is what our other landlord did, to like, pull this particular piece of the puzzle together, and so yeah, very fascinating stuff. And
Yeah, I
some
will
of it
say
tough.
just one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
I'll
ahead.
just say one comment, let other people talk. But one of the things that we're going to start to do is we're going to start to put language in our leases, kind
Yes.
of encouraging them to cooperate with us. It's not going to probably make or break the deal because we're not going to move from one location to another if they don't agree with it. But we do have some language that's kind of crafted to. We highly encourage you to participate in the process. And so hopefully that'll help us. But I will say what I've noticed with my offices, we have different size offices across the country. Sometimes if we have, a majority tenant where we have, 3 out of 5 floors, we're going to have a lot more success versus having, 10,000 square feet in a building that's 500,000 square feet because we're just a little,
Yeah.
tiny tenant. They don't care as
Right.
much sometimes.
But I encourage everybody on this call, if because we've done the same thing, and in all of our leases since I've been here, we put in a provision that they will assist and support our sustainability objectives by providing commercially reasonable reporting or something like. I mean, we give them a little bit, right? It's commercially reasonable stuff, but we even got that on a 10,000 square foot lease in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I can tell you that building does not really care about sustainability, and we still got the language. So, it was, so it's totally worth it. Trying to get that in there because I've been successful more often than not, even on small leases.
Yeah, we do that too. One of the things we're trying, I don't know if anybody else has is doing this. We are actually talking to some of our building tenants. Some of like in some offices, right? Scott, you were talking about you're not the biggest tenant. Well, that's the same for us in every office except for Seattle, right? So we've been talking to some of the big players in some of our other markets and seeing if they feel passionate enough to support us. And in DC in particular, we're talking to like there's the Post and there's a couple of other really big clients and another law firm in that building. And we're talking to them about trying to get the parking garage reorganized so that the e-vehicles can park higher so that they're closer to the pumps, right? Because they're parking at the bottom of the garage, and then they run out of electricity, and then you've got a car stuck in the bottom of your garage. And this is literally not something that the buildings want to do at all. They do not want to do this, but because we're putting so much pressure on them, and we did this successfully in Seattle, but we were the biggest tenant, where we actually had them give us about 20 more e-car spaces in the garage. Now we're trying to get them to give us more stations, electrical stations. So that's something, if you haven't tried, is trying to work with the other tenants. The only problem with that is, you may not become their great priority, but these things take a long time. Sometimes, it could take years, but when you make it happen, it's amazing.
Yeah, keep grinding away. Don't give up. And I mean, and so to Barry's point, I mean, that's why we have LSN, right? So like, we've found some commonalities here today, and now I know Oliver's got a Chicago office, and if you reach out, I'll be very happy to network with your local people to help figure out some sustainability. Scott, I know you've got a beautiful office. I've seen it, and right on Wolf Point here in Chicago. So if you've got somebody locally in Chicago that wants to reach out and talk about this with me, like, I'm very happy to do that. So encourage your colleagues and your friends at other law firms to join the sustainability network, the legal sustainability network, because we're going to continue to do things like this and network together and link arms so that we can figure out some of this stuff, like and we're going to find that you've got the same landlord. I mean, maybe somebody on this call is unfortunate enough to have Tishman Speyer as a landlord in one of their locations. I mean, so actually they're not too bad. They've gotten much better with sustainability, like since I started. They're much more open to it than when I first started working with them on this. So I shouldn't speak ill of them, because they've come a long way.
So before we wrap up, I just want to ask everyone, because some of you were quiet, and that's perfectly fine. Was this helpful? And we didn't get as many questions as we would have liked. We actually had quite a few more people, so something must have come up this morning. But if this was helpful and you'd like to continue it, this is the first member forum that I've participated in, and I have found it wildly helpful. And I've been just writing down as fast as I can kind of all the different things that you guys are doing and jotting down email addresses and the like. But that's what LSN is all about. We want to connect with you more regularly. We want to have these discussions. I mean, I would love to get to a point where we could do them, every single month, where we're having a discussion. And even, it doesn't have to be just our board members, I think, Scott and Oliver could probably have their own discussion, and everybody would be really interested in listening. So please, let us know if these are working for you, if you enjoy the format. Keep sending us questions. Doug and I, and Brooke too, because he's on the phone, we would be happy to, answer your questions and kind of keep the dialogue going. So I just really appreciate you all being here today. Doug?
Yeah, I think, I'm happy to entertain, we're happy to entertain questions for another 5 minutes if people want, or, if people are ready to be done, that's that's fine. But I would encourage you to give us feedback, because we do want to tailor these programs to our membership's needs. I hope you feel like this went well. I too, just like Barry, I was super happy with the topics that we discussed. I found all of your experiences very interesting. Hopefully, some of the things that I've said, that Barry have said, have been, somewhat helpful. Because we're all in this together. We want to make the planet a better, more livable place, and that's why we have this organization.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw one more thing out there. So some of us have been involved in LSN for quite some time. We are looking for new leaders. So if being involved with this organization is interesting to you, please let us know, because we'd love to increase our board size. We'd love to have more voices. We want to do this all together. So let us know.
Thank you. This is my first attendance at one of these, so it's been really instructive. So yeah, I didn't pose any questions in advance. I thought I'd rock up and see what it was like. But it's been really really instructive, and I think it's really helpful to swap notes on a regular basis. We're all, as you say, facing the same challenges, trying to do the same things, even if we have nuances within our different firms that make different approaches more relevant than others. But I think it could be helpful, yeah, to convene regularly. It may be helpful to have, to have particular topics that we're armed to discuss on each, on each occasion, even if we have a license to go completely off piste and talk about something different if the mood takes us. But I think it's useful to have a kind of, a steer on particular topics that people can then prepare in advance, and we could certainly like brainstorm some ideas for regular, for sort of scheduled topics, as there's more than enough things to talk about over the course of a year, even if we were to meet monthly, like you say.
And,
Love
to
that,
that
Oliver.
point, if you go to the LSN website and you log in, there is previous content. So you'll see, well, actually, Barry, that they didn't let you record that one, did they? So like, but you'll see
No.
us doing various programs like the ones that I was involved with. We did a program about indoor air quality and HVAC design, and we did another program about sustainable design in from an architectural perspective. So those programs are on the LSN website, so go visit, and this one will be posted so that membership can hear us talk about our successes and failures. That is a resource to you. So Oliver, in particular, if you're like, oh, I wonder if they ever talked about sustainable design, well, we did, and you can go on and and see if we have any helpful insights in that particular program.
Thank you. Sounds great.
All right. Well, lovely to see you all, and have a great day wherever you are.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Speak soon.
Thank you.